Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the webinar. Today, we are going to cover better payables management for Dynamics GP. We've got our friends at Mekorma here along with us to kind of guide us through some of their solutions and give us an overview. So I'm going to take care of a couple of housekeeping things first, though, as we move through. Excuse me. So the first thing, just want to remind everybody, we do send out the slides after all of our webinars. So you will get the slides on a follow-up email, certainly have our contact information and ways to get a hold of us here. We are looking forward to sharing this information, but also really look forward to getting in contact after and seeing how this can apply to you and be able to use the solutions that are here. So keep an eye out for those shortly after the meeting here or webinar. Also want to point out, please use the chat options here for any questions that you have during the webinar today. We're happy to answer those. Most likely we'll probably answer those at the end, but if we get a chance in the middle here, we'll squeeze some of those in as well. And we wanted to say hi to you. So just kind of a housekeeping note as well. We have our cameras on at the beginning. We like to turn those off once we get into the webinar so that you can see the information full screen on the screen here. So with that, we'll go ahead and move forward with a little bit of introductions here. And a little bit about us at sa.global first. So in case you're joining us and not currently working with us, or maybe a little extra nugget of information here, we've got a lot of information on the screen. The way I like to best describe it is, we are true a Microsoft partner. So if there is a Microsoft solution, whether ERP, Azure, Power Platform, CRM, whatever it is, we've got experts on staff here that we're happy to engage and discuss and help you out. So if you are looking for help on any of the Microsoft platforms, please reach out. We'll certainly get the right people involved and happy to always help out. With that, we'll get into some personal introductions here. So I get the pleasure of introducing Brendan here and kicking off the webinar. I'm the GP product lead here at sa.global. I'm John Kirsch, as you can see on the screen. Again, we'll have contact information following up if you have questions. But I've been with sa.global and Dynamic Consulting as we merged in over the last 2.5 years. I've been a consultant and partner for about 10 years now, and I've worked with GP for over 20 years. So a long history as a user for more time actually than I've been a consultant, and just have a lot of history with the product and happy to be able to continue to work with it and partner with some of the great ISV solutions, including Mekorma here. So I'm going to introduce Brendan here and actually let him fill in the blanks here with some of his background and jump into the presentation. So Brendan, thanks for joining us.
Awesome, thanks, John. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. My name is Brendan Coffey. As John mentioned, I'm a partner engagement manager here at Mekorma. I have been in the AP space for a little under 10 years, working in anything from sales to onboarding to support, and now I've joined Mekorma to spread the good news about some of the work that we're doing. As John mentioned, if you guys have questions, please let us know. We can either have them addressed here in this meeting or certainly figure out how to follow up in the right way. So please feel free. A little bit about Mekorma. So Mekorma has been in the AP space for, oh, so sorry, give me a second. All right, Mekorma has been in the AP space for over 30 years. We have a great deal of experience in AP and in GP specifically. We're excited to work with partners like sa.global to figure out ways that can enhance your experience with GP and really be able to solve some solutions that your company is working on. So why might you consider a Mekorma product? As I mentioned, Mekorma has been in the space for over 30 years, and in that time, we've spoken with a lot of different companies about their experience in their AP process, how they're using their systems, and some of the challenges that they're working on as they develop as a company, as technology changes, and as the marketplace changes. So some of the common themes that we have uncovered are as follows. AP departments often have a lot of paper. So if you are managing opening envelopes, sealing envelopes, invoices, checks, etc., that may sound familiar to you if that's something you're working on. If your team is spending a great deal of time manually entering data for invoices or payments, that is very time consuming. It can be very error prone. If your organization is having trouble paying vendors on time, whether it be a hold up in the approval process, again, that manual data entry, checks in the mail, so on and so forth, that's something a lot of organizations are struggling with. If you are victim to check fraud, or if you're concerned about check fraud, and it's something that you're working to reduce, that we know that there's a lot out there that's happening. If you have multiple companies and you have a very arduous process for actually processing transactions, we know that there's a lot of companies that are in that situation. And then finally, of course, certainly in the light of our recent pandemic, a lot of organizations are working to transition to either hybrid or full remote, and that is something that we know is very front of mind for a lot of organizations. So we're working to develop products related to that transition. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the different kind of players in a normal AP department, and a little bit about how Mekorma can help in at each level. So we'll start off with Ryan. Ryan is an AP clerk. He's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the accounts payable team. Ryan, if we are using Mekorma, has the ability to process invoices and payments with far less manual effort. Again, that's everything from opening envelopes, entering data, printing checks, closing envelopes, follow-up, research, etc. So we save Ryan a great deal of time that Ryan can then turn to devote to more valuable work for the organization, such as following up on payments, negotiating better payment terms, etc., etc. Now let's meet Ryan's boss, Debbie. Debbie is an AP manager, and Debbie is really concerned related to the control and visibility for the team. So we're really focused on making sure that folks like Debbie have visibility and that can maintain workflows and really manage compliance well. And then finally, at the executive level, we have Karen. Karen is the CFO of our organization, and Karen now has the ability with Mekorma to approve payments and sign payments digitally from any location. And then, of course, Karen is very concerned about any AP costs and the ability to reduce or at least maintain AP costs as the organization scales. All right, so we've broken down the AP journey or life cycle into three main parts. And really, every AP department does some version of this. And really, the exercise here is to understand how you're currently doing it today and see if there are any opportunities to enhance, improve, further secure, and make more efficient your current process. So at the highest level, we have the receipt of invoices, the selection of payments, and then the actual execution of those payments. This is an overview of our entire solution, and there's a number of companies that use the end-to-end solution. However, these are not necessarily all-inclusive, and we have a lot of organizations that are using a select portion of our solution. So this is essentially a la carte, depending on your circumstances. So let's double click into each of the major parts of each of these phases. Initially, we want to be able to capture invoices. We want to be able to approve those invoices. We want to then, once those invoices are approved, build batches, have any payments, payment approvals done. And then finally, when we're ready to pay, we either can pay in-house or we can outsource. All right, let's talk about our first act. In our first act, we're going to be focusing on the receipt of invoices. Mekorma has two Power Platform-based applications that we can help with the invoice automation. Those two products are Invoice Capture and Mobile Workflows. Let's talk about each of them in turn. Invoice Capture is a product that allows you to reduce the tedious and manual effort of getting invoices into Dynamics GP and then sent through for approval with their supporting documents. We don't necessarily need a full-fledged document management system, which is really helpful for those organizations who want to be able to streamline, but don't necessarily want to spend, nor need all of the functionality that comes with a full-blown document management system. So some of the struggles that we know that an organization can be struggling with is, again, we come back to this paper. If you are currently opening envelopes and then having to manually enter that data, invoice capture is something you can definitely consider. It provides, again, that elegant solution that really doesn't need that full-blown document management system and allows you to really solve one problem without the cost or the complexity of that, again, one of those full-blown solutions. And then, as we mentioned, we'll refer to in just a moment, if you're using other Mekorma products, there's a synergy that allows GP users for an end-to-end automation solution, which really works well for those organizations who are trying to automate the full process. Now, let's look under the hood a little bit as to what powers the invoice capture product. Invoice capture is built using Microsoft Power Automate and Microsoft AI Builder. As you'll see, all of our products are deeply, deeply integrated into GP and leverage a lot of products within the Microsoft ecosystem. Many organizations and users actually don't necessarily realize that there's a Mekorma product under the hood is so deeply integrated. All right, so now let's talk about a little bit how invoice capture works and how it can be integrated into your organization. There is part of the process that's going to happen outside of GP, and then part of the process that happens, or the rest of the process that happens once invoices are actually in the system. First and foremost, invoices are received at a dedicated AP mailbox, specific to each of your companies. Invoices can be submitted as attachments or embedded in the body of the email. So either way, it'll be able to kick off the process. From there, there's an automate flow that will monitor incoming emails and either convert the embedded invoices into a PDF or save the attached documents. Once that invoice or that file is created in that project folder, a second flow is going to kick off that leverages AI to actually extract the data and capture the content. Power Automate and AI solutions will run on the back end, and it's automatically going to activate anytime an invoice is received. Each company is going to need an email address in order for it to monitor, and then we'll need to determine who needs to receive the email notifications when invoice is processed. Once those back-end processes have completed, the invoice data is then pushed into GP for further processing. Once in GP, the invoice data can be accessed through the invoice validation window. An AP clerk can review each entry, validate for accuracy, and adjust the data as needed. This step is where human oversight happens. So essentially, instead of you having to type in all of that data and then check your own work, the AI is going to actually populate all of that, and all you have to do is check its work, which is, of course, unbelievably accurate. From there, once you've double checked that the invoice data that has been extracted is accurate and that you're ready to move on, the invoice is entered into a payable voucher. You can adjust the GL code as needed and save the voucher to a batch and submit through GP's transaction entry approval workflow. This is also where, excuse me, I'm sorry. We'll see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So once you have gotten through the GP approval workflow, that invoice can be posted, and then finally you can then move to that payment selection. Now, some of you may be thinking, I have members of my organization that are part of the approval workflow, but not necessarily in our AP team, or maybe even have access to GP. That is something that we definitely see a lot, and particularly as we work to potentially transition to a virtual organization or a hybrid organization, this might become very important. One of those things that Mekorma has done is built a Mekorma mobile workflow product. This essentially allows for any approver that needs to be part of the approval process to be able to take a look at any invoices that they need to approve through a mobile app. they can do 2 different supported GP workflows, the payable transaction workflow and the vendor approval workflow. This can be accessed on any device and really allows for, again, anybody that either doesn't have access, shouldn't have access, or just won't access GP to take a look at what they need to approve. Before I move on, are there any questions related to invoice capture or our mobile workflow product?
Thanks, Brendan. Doing a great job. I don't see any questions, but a good chance to remind everybody here. Again, if you see something here and have a question, please go ahead and put that in the chat.
Awesome. Okay, so we've received the invoices. We've extracted the data. We validated that the data is correct. We have had those invoices approved, and now we're ready to pay. One of the things that Mekorma recognizes as equally as arduous as the invoice process is the payment process. For those of you who are familiar with our Mekorma product, which has been in the market for many, many years, the payment hub may sound familiar as it has developed into the payment hub from our initial Mekorma product. The payment hub is designed to really help organizations automate and streamline the selection of payments and the approval of payments. This is done through a number of ways that we'll look at in just a second. A couple of highlights related to Payment Hub, as we've mentioned, is that it's deeply integrated within Dynamics GP. It looks and feels a lot like Dynamics GP. Your users will really be able to understand how it works and how it integrates with the system. It offers the most secure way to move payments through approval workflows with a lot of flexibility. If your AP team needs better ways to manage check and electronic payments, then Payment Hub gives you a lot of tools there. As all of our products, it includes built-in automation that can reduce manual workflow and streamlines multi-company transactions. And finally, as we've mentioned, if you have multiple Mekorma products, there's a number of synergies that exist between them. We'll take a look at in just a second as what that looks like. But Payment Hub is really that central nexus that those synergies show up. All right, let's move on to the second and the third act of our journey today. So the second act is related to selecting payments, where we're going to be able to build batches in a really effective and streamlined way. We'll be able to approve payments in a mobile way and allow for users that aren't, again, in GP to be able to approve those payments. In our third act, we're actually going to process those payments. Mekorma offers tools to process the payments in-house and a tool for you to be able to outsource those payments if you no longer want to be responsible for the printing and the printing of checks and the stuffing of envelopes. Finally, Mekorma helps you keep a detailed audit record of any transactions that flow through any of these products. This allows for, again, the ability to look back and make sure you continue to stay secure in your process. Okay. All right, so Action Board is a main feature that comes with Payment Hub, and Action Board allows you to process payment batches for one or more companies in one central location using something called robotic process automation to do the work for you. If you are currently someone who is responsible for processing transactions, and you have multiple companies, you're probably familiar with the hundreds of clicks that you may have to take, most of them redundant between companies. Action Board is something that allows you to cross-company select payments using certain criteria, such as the due date or the vendor. This eliminates an enormous amount of clicks and really allows you to go and really save an enormous amount of time when processing those transactions across companies. Once those batches have been created, then it will kick off a workflow for approvals. But depending on how you configure your workflow, it's ultimately configurable, but this is an example here where Ryan, our AP clerk, right, will select the payments that are ready for payment using that criteria across companies. And then based on those payments, either Debbie, Karen, or both will be responsible for approving them. Once approved, those will come back to Ryan for him then to actually execute those payments to those vendors. All right, so let's take a look at what the secure approval workflow looks like. So this is an example of a configuration that you can use for payments. Again, this can be done, it's going to be broken out into threshold levels, so different users approve at different dollar amounts, no matter what the payment method is. And then if you're familiar with electronic signatures and you use it, or you'd like to use it, we can have electronic signatures be associated with each of the threshold levels, so that once a payment is approved, a signature will automatically print on the check payment. So for example, if you want Karen's signature for a certain threshold and Debbie's for a different, that can be ultimately customized. Now, once the approval workflow has kicked off, those approvers will, in their GP ecosystem, they'll be able to be notified when they need to review, and they can log into GP to see pending transactions. Now, similar to invoices, we know that there are users who, again, either won't, can't, or shouldn't have access to GP. This means that for those payments that need to be approved, that might be a little bit arduous. As with invoices, Mekorma has developed a power approval product, which essentially allows for users that, again, aren't going to get into GP to take a look and be part of that payment process. You can add mobile approval capabilities if your approvers don't want to be limited, and again, particularly if they are not on premise. This product allows you to review your payments in all of your companies. So if you have multiple companies, again, this will actually pull any payment that needs approval, and then be able to display them all. You can also, of course, filter for a specific company if you need to. As we mentioned, if you're using other Mekorma products, like that invoice capture, this is where that synergy comes in. Those documents that have been captured and the data extracted, you can see the original attached document if you need to while you're approving that payment. This leverages the GP doc. This leverages GP's doc attach mechanism, and we can integrate with your document management system if you have a separate one that you'd like to use. Users are allowed to either approve or reject based on, again, however they'd like to, just like in GP, and they can leave a rejection reason if they end up rejecting. Alrighty, now that we have approved batches, we are ready to process the payment and ready to pay. So this brings us to our final and third act, which is where Mekorma Payment Hub and add-on solutions can help with the actual processing and execution of your payments. We'll look at different options you have for paying your vendors, whether it be in-house, leveraging Mekorma's integrated MICR technology, or you can choose to pay automatically and send your payments to a third-party outsource provider. Payment Hub is foundation for either option and allows you to, again, have all that configurability and control regardless of what you choose. So let's start with in-house. The Payment Hub is known for really go-to check printing solution for Dynamics GP. If you've heard of Mekorma, you've almost certainly heard of our MICR product. It allows you to print on blank check stock. It allows you to display company information like your logo or your address. And as we mentioned, you can configure electronic signatures, encrypted, of course, for strong security. So you can you can customize the way that your checks look. And then you're able to not necessarily have pre-printed check stock, which is both expensive and introduces a certain amount of risk. And then finally, if you are looking to outsource your AP payments, essentially eliminating an enormous amount of work for your team and creating a little bit more consistency and security around the way that you're processing payments, we have a product called Remote Payment Services. Why might you consider an outsourced payment product? Teams. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Not sure why that's happening, but okay. Teams need solutions to work remotely, of course, right? You can transfer the liability of payments made by the provider. So essentially, the provider will really take on the responsibility for making sure that those payments are secure. And then finally, you can even earn rebates for payments that are made by virtual card. All right, so let's take a look at the way this actually works. As we mentioned, in GP, you have that ability to automate the batch selection in GP. Again, this can be done by a couple of different criteria. You can then review and approve payments like we talked about. And then from here, if you're leveraging that remote payment services, instead of sending the payment data to an ERP system or to your printer in order for it to print checks, that data is actually transmitted to an outsourced provider in a remote payment connector. All that payment data is securely transmitted for those payments to then be executed. Funds are drawn from your bank, vendors receive the payment, and then the outsourced provider follows up with any payments that need, of course, follow up. Your process won't change much in the sense that, again, everything that has happened up until now, as far as invoice capture and payment approval and that sort of thing, is all going to look exactly the same. Really, again, it's just that moment when you're ready to print a check, you instead send it to that outsourced provider. As with all of our products, the Mekorma Remote Payment Services product has a robust audit log that keeps records of posted check and EFT batches, including who approved each batch. The feature provides an added layer of security when processing payments with Mekorma. All right, so let's take a look at some of the customers and use cases that have been that we've worked with. So this is a customer called Michigan Farm Bureau. This is a customer that is using our Payment Hub Action Board and really has gotten a whole lot of value out of it. As you can see, the customers see significant time savings when implementing Action Board automation, often as high as 75%. I cannot emphasize enough how much time this saves, particularly if you have multiple companies. I don't need to express to you who have multiple companies how much time it takes to actually process all of these, or I guess I should say payments across your different companies. Just one call out from what Amber mentioned is to say that we used to have a 6 to 8 hour process, and now we have reduced it to 2.5 hours. Now let's hear from a customer that's using our outsourced payments our outsourced payment product called Havtech. The amount of time it's going to take an AP staff to print, fold checks, stuff envelopes, etc. Again, we now have eliminated a lot of the manual work and allows that AP team to do things that are way more valuable for the organization, like aging report statements and even optimizing those vendor terms. All right, and that is the end of Act 3. Please let me know if you have any questions. I guess I should say, are there any questions that we can help answer? Or if we don't know, we can get you to someone who does.
All right, thanks, Brendan. I do have a few questions that have come in, so I'll fire some of those off here and we'll see what we can do. First one, I don't know if I'm reading it quite right, so I guess if you want to follow up on the question if I'm not reading this or we're not answering it quite right, but it was earlier on in the presentation asked about within a software, a user can change a vendor in it, so we may pay the wrong vendor. How is that protected? So I don't know if that was during the capture one or it might have been during the capture part of it, but maybe Brendan, if you could just kind of speak about making sure it's the right vendor, or kind of that AI technology that's behind it.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm going to speculate that there are probably at least two different places that we want to ensure that we have the right vendor, of course. The first one is going to be during that invoice capture piece, and that is definitely something where the AI will look to see what is available and then match it based on what's there. The confirmation or the review that's done by your AP team is something that's critical in order for you guys to make sure that it is the right vendor. So that's really the first check. And then that second check is when the invoice is ready to be approved. In which case, of course, that's the second layer. So essentially, we want to leverage some of the same processes in your organization that exist already in order to double check that the vendor is correct. We're just giving additional tools in order for you to do that more efficiently. And then finally, the data that you have in your in GP is still going to be critical when we think about the actual processing of payments. Just like you need accurate data in order to print on checks, we need accurate data to send to our outsource provider. So there are a number of different checks that will go into the process, and then again, you have a number of tools that can help you configure if there needs to be any additional layers of checks to determine if it's the right vendor or not.
All right, awesome. Great information. Again, if you submitted that question and it's not quite the right spot, feel free to drop another one in there to help us answer that. So another question that was entered, so the different part of the process here sounds like, so the question is, how do we know if we have enough money to pay all the invoices? So talking about the payment side of it, I guess I have some general thoughts on GP, but maybe I'll, Brendan, if you have some thoughts first, or if you've got something built into the solution there.
So yes, this is a great question, and I think this has as much to do with process as it does to do with our tools, but we can definitely double click into what the tools offer. This is part of this. For most organizations, this is going to be part of the payment initiation and payment approval process. Oftentimes, this will require a check of balances prior to payments either being initiated or approved. Right now, this is going to look similar in the sense that if you do leverage the third party, you will still need to make sure that the funds are available. So essentially, as you're initiating payments, whether they go to your to your printer or to the third party, you'll want to double check. The only asterisk I would say here is to say that when you're using an outsourced provider, there will be a change in cash flow just because we can essentially get that money to the vendor immediately if they choose to be paid by virtual card or by ACH or something along those lines. So that will affect a little bit your cash flow, but beyond that, it will look fairly similar as far as what checks you have in place today in order to make sure that you have that. Of course, the difference being is that it'll be way easier to take a look at all of the payments that are ready for processing in a single centralized place.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that. Another question then, switching gears, to print maker checks, do you still need that special toner to print that out? So do you have answers on that?
Sure do, yeah. So I can give you a bank's answer and I can give you my answer. A bank will definitely tell you that Maker ink is required. However, as the payments technology has evolved, as most of you know, maybe in your personal lives, you can scan a check with your phone in order to deposit it. So most banks, the only real specific use case is if that bank asks you to send a test, in which case they will probably share with you feedback related to the specific Maker ink. But beyond that, we've seen most of our customers don't necessarily have it and don't necessarily need it. So I will say those are two answers and happy to chat more if you have any more specific questions on that.
All right, thanks. Okay, a couple more here yet. So one is, how does that remote payment services impact your vendors?
Awesome. So this is a great question. Vendors will essentially, the big difference when it comes to vendors is that they're going to get more than just check as an option for payment. So when you first start using remote payment services, there are going to be a number of vendors that we already do business with and we've already established relationships with. So we have their information, we know how they'd like to get paid, and those payments will just flow through the normal process. For any payments that are, for any vendors that are not in our system, we will contact them, let them know that they have additional options other than check, and then establish whatever their preferences are as far as receiving payments. The other thing that vendors can enjoy here is to say that let's say for whatever reason they're getting ACH, if they change bank accounts, for example, they can change bank accounts just with us and don't have to go communicate that with 15 or however many, how many customers they're doing business with. So remote payment services actually enhances significantly a vendor's experience and is a big benefit for most vendors.
So I'm going to actually add one on, just hearing you describe that. Maybe it popped into somebody else's mind as well. So if somebody hasn't set up like EFT or ACH payments to their vendors in GP, so they haven't entered all of their bank information and all of that information for the vendors, and they're considering remote payment services, does that simplify the process? Don't want to give the answer as I'm leading it, but can you talk about that? What's needed in GP versus what you're able to do then, kind of handing that off to the remote payment services?
No, you're exactly right. Is to say that when you use remote payment services, the onus of reaching out to your vendors, collecting their bank account information, whatever else that may be required is now no longer on your shoulders, right? And that really for most payments, unless you need to go research them, you may not know how they were transmitted, right? Is to say that it's really behind the scenes, and that really what you'll know is that the payment has been processed. So it's actually great. I should say, if you don't have that set up, and yet a vendor is interested in it, that's a great time, if you will, to consider remote payment services, so that work is not necessarily on you guys. So yeah. John, you're spot on.
Yeah, kind of leading that, but yeah, it's a great time to do it. Not having to also get those email addresses for remittance and things like that necessarily have to go through all of that setup the same way. Just kind of narrow it down to the key information there. So, okay. And okay, one more piece on that, or question on that remote payment services. Can I still send a check locally if we're using that remote payment service?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah, for sure. And we know that there will be instances. Most customers that use RPS send the vast majority of their payments through, but we know that there are going to be instances where we need to cut checks in-house. So yes, you very much still retain the ability to send that data to the local printer instead of the outsourced provider.
All right. I've got one more I'm going to squeeze in here, unless somebody else, if you've got one quick and want to put it in the chat, please do so. Otherwise, a question in there for maybe an organization where they're really committed to the signature. So, they have that control and visibility of physically signing the check. Do you have any advice on, how to build the confidence, make the business case for those mobile approvals?
I have a feeling this might be maybe the same person or someone of very like mind who talks about the is there enough money in my account before I can process payments. So yes, obviously, historically, wet signatures have been used as a means to any number of things. It can be account balances, it can be vendor relationships, it can be any number of things. For those folks that are concerned about that or are very hesitant to give up that wet signature, one of the things that I find fairly compelling is the very robust reporting that can be done within the system if we use that approval workflow, whether it be the approval workflow that's in GP or even the mobile workflow. We now have a super robust audit log that shows who approved it, when they approved it, what documents were attached, so on and so forth, which increases the visibility and security into those far more than a wet signature would, so that they retain that control and even arguably increase that control, and then gives them visibility into anything that they need to do research into. So that usually is something that can be compelling to say that we have a better solution, if you will, for those wet signatures.
All right, thanks, Brendan. Looks like I think that's it for questions. So I turn my camera on just to thank everybody here. First off, Brendan, thank you so much for sharing the information, for answering the questions here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you for being a partner with us and working with all of our clients together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to put a little plug in too. So I know Mekorma and you all have been very active in Summit. Our company, sa.global, has as well. So we will be at Summit. We're presenting a whole bunch of sessions. I don't even know the total across our company, probably well over a dozen to 15 maybe between our crew. So we've got a good sized group going down there. We'll be at booth 1603. So please stop down and see us. I'm happy to talk. We can swing over. I looked up your booth number, Brendan, at 816. So we could certainly swing over and chat together. So hope to see a lot of folks in person there. Other than that, again, I want to thank everybody for attending. We will be following up again with slides and contact information. So hopefully you found some good pieces of information, some good thoughts going here on what can be applied in your organization, and we're happy to keep that conversation going. So please reach out, let us know questions, or again, how can we apply this in your environment. So Brendan, anything else to close us up here?
No, but we will definitely be there. Come say hi. I'd love to meet some of you in person.
All right. Okay. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we hope everybody has a great day. Take care.
Thank you.